All right, I'm back in the park, just enjoying this newfound freedom of roaming around outside without freezing. So why not? Why not just make use of it and go to the park every day and record videos in the park? Today I want to talk about Scott Galloway, who some of you probably have heard about. He talks a lot about the crisis of men, of young men. He is on a lot of podcasts, goes on TV shows, and he's the original inspiration, I suppose, or catalyst, to actually think of this crisis as an opportunity to make something better, right? To like leave a little dent on the world by trying to help these young men and yeah, like basically like I was listening to him a few times over like a year ago, probably 2 years ago at this point. And I would just kind of connect the dots and be like, hey, why don't we change this? Like, I guess Scott is already doing a lot by writing books and being on podcasts and raising awareness because he's a public figure. But it doesn't seem like a lot of people out there are actually trying to find practical solutions in one-on-one work with men, with young men, right? To try and mentor them and work with them and help them. Actually, I would love to find out if there are more of these people out there because so far my research has come up with almost nothing. Like hardly, I think there's like one or two guys in Australia that are working with young men specifically, not with parents. So they kind of had this idea already some time ago, but for all intents and purposes, it feels like I'm like alone in this space from my perspective. Like I don't see anybody in Europe or in America doing this. I don't see any content being produced on this particular topic. Whereas there's a whole slew of adult men coaches, right? Like like coaches for adults, for males in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And usually this is summarized as the dating market or dating niche. Adult male men's dating, essentially, to keep it simple. So the thing with Scott is that he has a new book out that I haven't read yet. It's called Notes on Being a Man, and it sounds really interesting. A lot of these ideas I already heard him talk about in his podcasts or in his appearances on podcasts, and he essentially, for example, what he does is a phone audit because he also mentors young men to some extent. Like he does take a few of them on. I guess the lucky few who are privileged enough to have access to him, and then he kind of coaches them a little bit as well. And so one of the things that I think is really important that I'm also offering is, I mean, this is actually kind of one of the first basic steps that we all should do, is like we should do a phone audit where we audit how many hours per day the young man spends on his phone and exactly what he's doing on that phone. But as we might imagine, it's nothing good. It's nothing harmless, because we can also use our phone in more harmless ways, obviously, that don't have this highly dopaminergic, there's not a lot of dopamine being released when, for example, you are just checking your calendar or you're in your notes or you are checking your email. That is rather boring or neutral kind of stuff from a dopamine perspective. But most of the time, obviously, is not spent doing that. It is spent being on social media, scrolling, TikTok, Reels, gaming. And so so that is like one of the few things I picked up from Scott, and is kind of like an absolutely fundamental first step when I start working with someone. And now I'm working on something called the variable reward phone protocol, which is an idea which is taking the idea from casinos, where casinos essentially are in the business of getting people addicted to gambling because of variable reward, which has been studied by scientists, by most prominently B.F. Skinner, who first conducted an experiment around rats, who learned that when they pushed a lever, there was an unpredictable pattern as to when they would be rewarded each time they pushed that lever. They would get some sort of little, piece of food or whatever it was, like just a little, goodie. And that reward came unpredictably. That's why it's called variable reward. It varies. It's not predictable. And that mechanism is what keeps people coming back to slot machines and to basically gets them addicted to slot machines and gambling. And that's why casinos are in the business of like gambling, right? And exploiting that human psychological weakness, if you will. But the interesting thing is that when you look into this, and this is something Andrew Huberman talks about, he says that this can actually be used to our benefit when it comes to learning a more beneficial use of your phone, learning to use your phone where you're not always rewarded with these highly dopaminergic things. Because if we design the environment in such a way that we don't know what to expect, we don't know if we're going to be rewarded, because sometimes we're not rewarded, that can actually help us reset the baseline, like baseline dopamine, which is a good thing, because, well, dopamine is a pretty complicated topic, but essentially it's about, we want to make sure that our baseline doesn't drop too low. And it drops too low when we consistently engage in highly dopaminergic activities, which 99% of being on your phone is about, especially for young men. Because it's always social media, it's notifications, it's the sound of the notification that is just shown to, each time that happens, you are triggered, you are stimulated, and that is a highly problematic thing. So one approach is to obviously try and just go cold turkey and do a complete dopamine fast from one day to the next, and just kind of try and get through like 2 weeks and then maybe 4, like 2 weeks and then another 2 to make it a month. That's what Anna Lemke talks about in her book Dopamine Nation, and that's what she suggests. But I'm trying to work out a system that maybe is a little more manageable, especially for young men, like early teenagers, like 13, 14, 15, who are just in the early phases of adolescence and who are still largely kids, right? And who need more guidance and more sort of supervision. And then hopefully with time, they learn to actually guide themselves and to be their own accountability buddy. So that whole idea with the phone audit, phone time audit, whatever, is very useful, and I think it's one of the cornerstones of helping, first of all, get off the phone so that we can start using that time that we're going to free up for actual real world activity, like being out of the house and actually meeting people. And that's also what Scott Galloway talks about a lot he believes that a young man should only be at home 7 hours per day out of the day, which are the hours that he sleeps. That might be a little radical. In fact, for teen men, 7 is not enough. They should probably be sleeping 8, 9, 10 hours if possible, because they need a lot of sleep. But outside of that, I totally agree that they should not really be at home much. It's if possible, they should be out and about, at school, and after school they should be playing sports, or going to a first job, or some other activity, some passion project, some group that they're a part of, that helps them be social, that helps them be out in the real world. Yeah. Yeah, so so that's one of the things that Scott says. I mean, he says a bunch of other things. I think Scott's on a really good mission. I think a lot of people have already recognized that there is a masculinity crisis. There is a crisis of men, which is essentially because of our comfort and convenience culture in the West, in the first world. And that's a trap, and that's why it is, just in a way, it's kind of super hard nowadays to become a man, because men thrive when there are challenges and when there are problems to be solved. And when there are no problems to be solved and nothing to fix, then it's like, what's my purpose in the world? Like, if I can't provide or protect anyone, then who am I? And it's futile to try and get that out of men's systems, because that's like their biological makeup. So we have to find this purpose by being smart and environment engineers or environment designers. And that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment. And I'll be happy to have you give me your feedback and join me with any ideas that you might have. I do want to say that I don't think that, working on, this is also, obviously mindset is a huge thing. Just talking to a young man, just becoming his friend, gaining his trust, basically talking about all kinds of things is also really important, which is what a lot of adults are doing when they try to help teenagers, is talk to them, help them understand their emotions. Basically by verbalizing problems, right? Or by finding a smart way of communicating about challenges. But at the same time, so I do believe that's a really big part, and that's also what I do. But on top of that, I'm also just really interested in designing specific mechanisms and practices, like hands-on mechanisms that we can implement that help young men actually go through with making that first step. I think it's usually about making the first step, and then once he's kind of tasted blood for the first time, then he usually doesn't need any reminders, and then he will probably and hopefully go back to it. But that initial momentum needs to be accrued to get out of avoidance. So yeah, I think that's going to be it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you the next time I'm in the park. All right.